I just got back from a 2-week vacation where I took my family to Japan. While I was there, I went to a whole bunch of retro video game stores. This is part 2 of my Japan retro video game pickups.
Star Wars for the Famicom. Remember that iconic scene in Star Wars where Luke Skywalker fought Darth Vader on a Jawa sandcrawler and Darth Vader transformed into a scorpion? What about when Luke ran over a bunch of stormtroopers as he drove his speeder through the desert like he was in Grand Theft Auto? Well, all of these things happen in the Japanese exclusive version of Star Wars for the Famicom. This game was developed by Namco and is completely different from the Lucasfilm-developed NES Star Wars that came out in the States. Its adherence to the source material is tenuous at best, but it's got all that 1980s goodness that you come to expect from Japanese exclusive video games. It's also pretty difficult, and regrettably can't be cheesed very well using Game Genie or Pro Action Replay code, due to every enemy in the game having different collision logic with the player. But it's a great game regardless, and pretty fun if you can take it slow and careful. Devil World for the Famicom. Devil World is a Nintendo-developed game that takes some heavy inspiration from Pac-Man. It's a maze-based game where you move a character around the screen eating dots and avoiding enemies. The central gimmick that it employs, and what sets it apart from its inspiration, is that the arena auto-scrolls, constricting your movement and creating pinch points where you can be killed by the screen scrolling and flattening you between walls. It's also notable for being the first console game that Shigeru Miyamoto developed at Nintendo, his previous titles being arcade games. What a lot of people in the West don't realize is that the Famicom existed in Japan for years before Super Mario Bros. Was created. That game marked the North American release of the NES, but the Famicom already had a mountain of titles available long before that even happened. Devil World, being such an interesting milestone in Shigeru Miyamoto's career, is the big reason I wanted to pick it up while I was in Japan. Salamander for the Famicom. I might have had a bit of a Gradius theme to the games that I purchased in Japan, because Salamander is another Gradius spin-off. Originally coming out in the arcade, Salamander was a side-scrolling shmup that is most notable for introducing a two-player cooperative mode, where each player controls a different ship with different abilities. The Famicom port isn't technically the same as the original Salamander arcade game, as it also includes changes that were made to the Life Force re-release of the game that made it out in Japan and America. The game was also brought out for the NES in the West, however, that is technically different from the Japanese Famicom release. The Famicom version includes 2 endings and additional power-ups, and is the version I really wanted. All told, Salamander is a spectacular shmup and an incredible Famicom game. It really pushes the system hard, as is evident by the frequent slowdown you encounter playing it, and has awesome 2-player cooperative gameplay. Splatterhouse, Wanpaku Graffiti for the Famicom. Splatterhouse is a game series by Namco where you play as a university student turned monstrous hero, Rick, as he tries to rescue his girlfriend, Jennifer, from paranormal horrors. Its games have been ported to dozens of platforms over the years. Splatterhouse Wanpaku Graffiti is a parody of the Splatterhouse arcade game, with super deformed versions of the characters from the game, as well as other pop culture horror references. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up with more of an emphasis on platforming than the other titles in the series. Graphically, it's pretty impressive for a Famicom game, employing parallax, cutscenes, and often large sprites. It's also one of those Japanese exclusives that really deserves more attention overseas than it otherwise gets. The recent Namco Museum Archives collection includes it, so if you want to check it out yourself without tracking down original hardware, you certainly can.